Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Beach FM, great to welcome back the chair of the Waikanae Community Board, James Westbury. Good morning to you, James.
Oh, and good morning to you. How are you today?
I'm well, and I do hope you are as well. Now, the strategic plan that you hinted out some time ago for the Waikanae Community Board, and by extension, I guess, for Waikanae itself, I believe that's out for consultation.
Indeed. At the moment, we've got that published on the Kapiti Coast District Council website, and we've also had a publication in the local paper with regards encouraging the community to review the Waikanae Community Board's strategic plan and looking at whether our priorities that we've identified for Waikanae align to that of the community. So just to give everybody a bit of a heads up, maybe what's in their strategic plan and what we consider sort of strategic priorities. We've included the continuation of developing the town centre, and in particular the rebuild of our library, and we see that as one of the key elements of seeing our town economically prosper, and we're hoping that some of the work and plans that might materialise out of that, because of a lot of government funding, we might see something progress faster than one might normally. So we might be in good stead to see some rural action put in train. So hopefully the community aren't in any doubt that that's a reasonable priority for our community. But excuse me, but looking a little bit deeper, we're also looking to be a little bit more involved in parks and reserves in Waikanae, and looking at how we can improve our facilities, not just for the young but also for the old, to see how we might ensure that our parks and reserves are fit for purpose, and trying to create a destination park in Waikanae with regards to Waikanae Park. So it might mean that we're planning to have a little bit of disinvestment in some of what we call our sort of outlier parks or development parks. Yeah, and Waikanae's got a number of development parks. It's where developers are required under the district plan to establish a park. And unfortunately what happens is with every one of these small development parks that ensues, they're about 400 metres apart, and they cost about $200,000 to replace and maintain. So what we're trying to encourage is actually, rather than replacing all these individual parks, why not create a really full park that's full of amenities and equipment for young and old, and also trying to work with some of the local clubs and facilities about how they might be able to co-locate in one site. And that means different codes all working together. That might mean maybe rugby, soccer, cricket, and possibly even wrestling, even to see how we could work together to have a really great asset that can be used by all, rather than everybody struggling to with the repairs and maintenance of their own facilities. So we're just hope we're putting that out there, and would like to get the community's view. We don't pretend that we know exactly what people want in that account, but I think the conversations I've been having in the community are broadly in line with what we've identified.
Well, that's excellent. I wonder if just before we move on, I'd like to go back to you mentioned older people, and of course many of the citizens of Waikanae are older people, and making the parks more suitable for older people. Are you thinking about having exercise equipment designed for older people in those parks? Because that's an enormous trend overseas.
Indeed, that's absolutely spot on. So it's making our recreational facilities, ageless really, because they'll have equipment that for the very young, but also for the aged, and it's making sure that we all get the benefits as a community of a park and the recreational areas that we've got. So, and I think we've got a stunning site at Waikanae Park that could be really capitalised. Once upon a time, apparently, we used to have international test matches and cricket there. It would be fantastic to see those sorts of, or even regional cricket games return back to that site.
Oh, yes. All for that.
Yeah.
All for that.
And it's even got the possibility of being a fantastic venue for maybe even concerts, even given it's got quite an amphitheater-like facility. So it's really exploring all the options there, but this is putting it on the, just saying this is what we'd like to promote and ensure that we've got the community behind us when we're talking to our local council, and also trying to secure money and funding that might materialise to enable our vision to be delivered.
Excellent. I believe you're involved in a seminar to do with economic development, and I imagine that's come into more and more focus recently.
Indeed. I was at a briefing on Tuesday, and we were given a bit of an update from a slideshow that was presented from the ANZ Bank chief economist describing the economic outlook. And what it has identified is the Kapiti Coast has actually been quite resilient with regards to the impact of COVID-19. Given that we're not highly tourist dependent as a region, but that a number of our employee people have managed to retain their employment, being in the government sector, but also are working from home and thereby spending locally more than they would be in Wellington. So what's been our capital city's loss has been our gain. And the key thing is actually, well, how do we, I know it sounds a little bit selfish, but how do we maintain that localism and create people to ensure that the Kapiti Coast is a great place to live and work? And I foresee in future that we're possibly going to have a problem of being a real destination for people to move, not only young or old, in future.
Is that a problem?
We might, it's just the planning conundrum that creates.
See. To make sure we've got the capacity to act in that way. Right.
Making sure our sewage and water and other infrastructure is able to meet those needs. And at the moment, our council is quite constrained by its level of potential spending and large community infrastructure projects. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's a good problem to potentially have.
Indeed. Speaking of water, the government has come out with a proposal which suggests that they will contribute to water and wastewater infrastructure and projects, providing we sign up to some sort of local consortium, as almost a centralisation of those services. Do you have a view on this, James?
It's a real tricky one. In some ways, I believe it's going to be of real value to, enhance the provision of water supply services and actually get economies of scale with regards to purchasing. Unfortunately, Kapiti as a council, has actually invested very wisely in the past in terms of our water. Whilst I understand people didn't like water meters, what it's meant though is that our water infrastructure is in actually really good shape compared to other councils. So with regards to Paeroa, Wellington and the Hutt Valley, the real risk is that the Kapiti Coast ratepayers end up subsidising those other regions to get up to scratch of where we're at this point. In addition, it's a major asset to our council, so we'd see potentially a significant reduction in our asset base as a council should that be withdrawn from our council's books or balance sheet. So there's some real positives and some real negatives. Personally, I think New Zealand's such a small nation. I think consolidating some of those services I'm not against. I just think it needs to be quite carefully thought through so that local ratepayers don't bear a greater burden of rates because of the poor investment of our local counterparts elsewhere in the community, Wellington, Paeroa, Upper Hutt and Lower Hutt potentially with regards to water services. So, I wouldn't look fondly on our community having to subsidise those communities where we've already borne the pain of investing in our water.
And do you think that the potential disappearing of those assets from the credit side of the balance sheet for Kapiti would lessen our borrowing ability and therefore our ability to expand?
Well, if we use the current measures that are used for our borrowing, yes, it will, undoubtedly, and it's worth a lot of money if our assets with regard to water. So that's the conundrum it creates. Where and what does that do to our ability to borrow or even generate revenue to pay for such services? So it's a real conundrum.
As you say, it is a conundrum. It's going to be interesting to discuss this in the future. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, James. It's been interesting yet again. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
And thank you very much.
106.3 Beach FM.